Howdy, folks. Welcome to another episode of The Inciting Incident. I'm your host, Tim Shields. This one has been a long time in the making. We were originally supposed to do this in February, but alas, here we are, mid to late summer. But I'm happy to say we finally locked it down. So as you know, this podcast is called The Inciting Incident because I'm interested in the human stories and the story arcs that they create behind the public figures. And I'm pretty sure we're going to get a good story arc today. So my next guest, I met at a Dr. Joe Dispenza event in Nashville, maybe like a year and a half ago. And we got to hang out quite a bit, share some meals, swap some stories. So I'm excited to go deeper into that. With that, I'm going to give you his bio, which is always the most challenging part of the interview. Wes Geer is a guitarist, songwriter, and founder of the nonprofit Rock to Recovery. A founding member of the alt metal band Hed PE and former touring guitarist for Korn, Wes rose to prominence during the explosive rise of the West Coast nu metal scene. After finding recovery from addiction, he shifted his focus to helping others through music. With Rock to Recovery, he brings the transformative power of songwriting and performance into treatment centers, rehab programs, and beyond. Wes's mission is to demonstrate that transformation is possible, not just for individuals, but culture at large. His journey from stage to service has made him a sought-after speaker, advocate, and example of how music can both be medicine and message. Welcome, Wes.
Thank you very much. Well, that was pretty good. Did you have ChatGPT?
A little bit, but I also dabble in writing. So
it's true. That's true.
Yeah.
It's very nice. Thank you for such a great intro.
Of course. So, I usually start out this show with the same question, and I know we're going to move forwards and backwards through time from this starting point, but who were you, where were you, and did you have any idea what you wanted to do with your life when you were 17?
Okay, 17, I was at a continuation high school. I loved music and had rock star dreams, but you don't know how realistic those are. I was very lost. I had been kicked out of a few schools. And I think 17, I think I technically towards right before my 18th birthday, I graduated from my continuation school. Very momentous occasion. They said, Wes, come to the office. I said, what's up? And they said, you graduated. I'm like, after all these years of tumult and getting kicked out of schools and all, just like that, I'm graduating. I remember getting a little choked up because it was so anticlimactic. So that's basically where I was, flunked out of college and, got fired from McDonald's and different fast food chains and just struggling to find my way as a super stoner in the world.
Mm-hmm. And when did you actually start playing with bands?
Well, we had garage bands back then. It's hard to get a full band together in high school, but we had the neighborhood drummer, Jeff Kelly and Steve Hools on guitar, and we would jam out. I don't think we ever had a bass player, so, it is what it is. But I think the first band I got in that had a singer, so that was a challenge for me for a lot of years, is having all these bands without singers. You're just kids and you're happy to jam. And we were doing a lot of prog rock stuff, so we didn't mind. I had this ripping bass player, me, the drummer, and we just do prog rock like Iron Maiden, Yngwie Malmsteen, weird stuff. But my first band with a singer was probably in the mid-'90s, to date myself. And we started, that was at the death of the Sunset Strip, right at the tail end there. We still had some fun times going out and handing out flyers when the Strip was packed every Friday and Saturday night with just seas of people. And so I got to see the tail end of that.
And then, so when do you start your band, Hed?
So, yeah, I had a few crappy bands. And then I actually, in the tail end of that, saw my singer at the Whiskey A Go-Go. My singer at the time, he's a dear friend of mine, much softer persona. And this guy I saw was really aggressive and just had this strong, pompous charisma. And I was like, I want to work with him. And so I started courting him. His name was Jared Shane, and took a long time. My band was starting to give up on that lineup. His band was giving up on that lineup. And finally we got together and started figuring out, we both wanted to work with each other, and we know we needed a new direction. And back then, and you were chasing the record deal. It was like this holy grail that, a record deal, the record labels are coming. Oh my God. Wow. It was this whole thing. And so you always heard about these shows where record labels were coming, which is mostly a bunch of BS. But it was this like, how do you get people to care about your music? So out of that comes this desperation as a creator to be relevant and have, because we had times where there's 300 people at our show, which by today's day and age, you see these artists with 1 million followers and they go play and there's 40 people there, so we didn't have social media, of course, but we would get a couple hundred, but we still sucked. And we, in our hearts, knew it,
Yeah. But you kept at it.
Kept at it.
So when was that turning point? Was there a record deal?
Yeah. So in 94, we're doing our band probably a little later. We probably formed around 94. And then it went through song. We probably wrote, over a dozen songs we didn't use. And just to be honest, at this time I'm a heavy drinker, and then I got really into drugs. And right when I got really into drugs, I was using drugs as a muse, and because I'm, it's no secret I'm sober now, so I can tell you the arc of the story. And I went in, and I kind of knew in the back of my head that I was using this to get into like this dark underworld of both culture and, shadow and everything, and really channel from that spot. My previous band was more happy and, if it rains, let it pour. And we were going dark and gnarly and rudimentary peni. And I was hanging out, my singer was black, and I was hanging out with skinheads in Huntington Beach because there was still a skinhead culture. And I felt like it was like this underground reporter. They don't know my singer's black. And I was like seeing how these crazy people lived. And yeah. And so, right around the time of my darkest drug days, we were selling out clubs, and the cool brands like Black Flies and Focus skateboards were giving us gear and putting us in ads. And I remember this one, we promoted really hard. We were at every club every night passing out flyers with the concept that if people see our name everywhere, it'll feel like we're popular, right? So I remember coming to one show going, we were all like, wonder if anybody's going to be there. We didn't really promote so well. We turned the corner and it was just lying down the street. And we're like, and so, yeah, labels came out and they gave us a deal, got signed to Jive Records, which is not around anymore, but it started as an East Coast hip hop label. Yeah. And we were featuring punk and hardcore, and people would say metal. It wasn't metal though. And hip hop flavors and all that. So for an East Coast label that was steeped in street culture to go, you guys got it going on. It was we felt like a great, it was just like, we felt seen in our efforts,
And who were some of the bands like that were kind of in that circle, that LA kind of scene at that time?
So we left LA because LA was dying, and I was telling my band we got to get down to the beach because I, being a kid who loved the beach, I was in the previous bands in Yorba Linda area and was like, I got to get out of Yorba Linda. I don't like it here. Got to the beach just out of a desire to be near the ocean, and in so doing saw that there was this like really intense undercurrent of clubs and skate and snowboard and DJs and everything. And this would have been, late 90s. And so we were playing in Huntington Beach clubs with bands like Sugar Ray, Deftones, Korn, Incubus, System of a Down, and LA too. But we stayed in OC for a while before we even went to LA. So those were all our peers.
Was Sublime in that scene?
Sublime too, yeah. We played with Sublime. Matter of fact, we played with Sublime in Long Beach at a place called Seaport Ballroom, which is gone. I saw Sublime play at a little Avila's El Ranchito in Huntington Beach, like literally just a taco shop, and they're on the terracotta tile floor right next to the tables. So this is the scene that we came out of.
He had quite a fiery arc. Yes. So there is this very dapper, coiffed picture of you pinned to the top of your Instagram. And underneath it says, through a miraculous process, life was transformed. My life was transformed from feeling hopeless and ready to give up on life to a life beyond my wildest dreams. What does that mean? It means that my life has been filled with things that I never even considered, that didn't even exist in my imagination. So I'm going to kind of use that as a frame for where we go from here. And I'm going to ask you, take us back to the moment when things began to fall apart. What was your inciting incident, that moment of no return that eventually led to transformation?
Yeah. So, Hed toured around the world for about a decade, and we were very open about our debauchery. We bragged about it, and we were terrifying to other bands. I think we didn't get it because we're like, what? You're supposed to get wasted and play music, but we were super annoying. The singer and I had a falling out, as bands tend to do. We tried using the rock star counselors that got like Aerosmith back together and all this kind of shit. And so it was a year of misery on the road where we're in a tour bus, and we're right there. We're opening for Godsmack. We're at the next level. We're going to break through. But it was so depressing for me. Like, I was just like, I can't go on like this. I'm miserable. I'm depressed. My singer hates my guts. I can't seem to fix it. And so I was praying a lot, like, God, show me the way, whoever you are, whatever you are. And so I bailed. I quit suddenly because we got in a huge blowout, the singer and I. And then I started working for my brother. And once I was out of my band, I didn't realize how much I had identified with me as a musician, as my career. That's who I am, right? And honestly, I liken it to kind of like somebody who's in the service, right? You kind of get indoctrinated that I'm here with my brothers and sisters to serve this country. That's how I felt in a musical sense. So I started working with my brother. He gave me a good job that I hated and paid me decently, more than I was worth, though it wasn't a lot. But I got so depressed, I went back to drugs in a big way, not realizing that it was because of the depression, really. And then I just kind of crash and burn. I mean, I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't eating. People were like, they'd say like, "How you doing, Wes?" I'm like, "Oh, fine." They're like, "Dude, how are you doing?" What? I mean, at this point, to be honest, because I had a day job, so I couldn't sleep off the drug use. I found some makeup in my bathroom. A girl left there, and I started putting it, trying to hide some dark circles. So now I look like some goth guy unintentionally, right? Just probably didn't match my skin tone or anything like that, and it was bad. So yeah, I broke down on my brother, and I was like, I can't go on like this. What do we do? And I ended up in a rehab. And so just because I had been struggling to beat these demons for so long, and was like, I surrender. What do you want me to do?
Well, that's a kind of a good segue into, I want to talk about rehab, but in my new book, I talk about core wounds. And I believe if they're not addressed, they create an unconscious trajectory in our life. And while this isn't really a complete list, and some aspects overlap, I found 7, which are abandonment, rejection, neglect, powerlessness, conditional love, and fear of intimacy. And it doesn't have to be any of those, but can you identify what that core wound was that you were, was it abandonment? Was it wanting to be seen?
Yeah, that's great. I like that. I didn't memorize all the ones you said, but many of them were like ding, ding, ding. For me, I do identify as an alcoholic, though I did a lot of drugs, meaning like when I ingest something, I get what they call the phenomenon of craving. I just want more, more, more. So that's kind of a little different part of me, because to come at it from another way, there's a lot of people who have maybe the same attributes or core wounds or traumas or whatever that don't turn into alcoholic and drug addicts, right? So one of the differentiating characteristics is I have kind of the genetic disposition. And I don't like to wear that as a name that makes me like eternally plagued or anything. It's just the reality that I know that's how it goes. And so with that, I mean, I know that I discovered years later, I was like really missing my dad's love, like wanting that.
Interesting. Yeah.
To be there. I felt abandoned by him. And again, like, this isn't victimhood. This is understanding. And I've done a lot of somatic healing where I get into what was the emotion, the actual statement. Underneath the feeling, there's a statement we say in these traumatic moments, right? And in that moment, I felt like I was really being hurt by my father when he was fighting with my mom, and I'm 5 years old. And so it was like this fear of being hurt by people I love and feeling abandoned. And then also it turned into being not good enough. So my coping mechanism was to be extra, to be special, because certainly just being me isn't good enough. I have to really work to get people's love. And I think that contributed. I had some sexual abuse in my youth as well. And I think that contributed. And I actually had some good heartbreak. One girl just like broke my heart good. And
was that your first love or later?
She was my first real love, even though we weren't in a functional relationship. And again, it's not playing victim, but after that, I got real scared of intimacy. You know what I mean? And so all these things is kind of making this combo burrito. So then it's the fertile soil. So then when I take a drink, I'm like, there it is. I take a drink, I can connect to you. I take a drink, I feel fearless, and the liquid courage and all that kind of stuff. And then you add the fact that looking up at my rock star heroes, that were Lodies, and you hear about this stuff, and I loved checking out and going into that creative space.
Mm-hmm. I think it's kind of a human story arc. Those core wounds are what we're trying to overcome. And then when they're left unaddressed, they create this unconscious trajectory. And they always keep coming up when that trigger happens. And then, whatever else you reach for a drink, etc. So you were living what a lot of people would call the dream. You're touring all over the world, and later with Korn. At what point do you realize success wasn't enough and that something deeper was missing? And how long did it take you? There's a lot of questions, but to identify what that was missing.
Well, because I went to rehab, I got into like, what does it mean to be an alcoholic? And in there, we get into like things like our resentments and our fears and making amends to everybody and everything. So after my first band, before Korn, I did a lot of deep personal work. You know what I mean? And I started learning what my, like you say, wounds were, or my patterns were. And I'm a 12-step guy. In that process, you're constantly doing a self-evaluation. So as you get to the next level, there's always more you can learn about yourself, more about your Achilles heels and what have you. So it was through that process of desperation of not wanting to die and not having a career. I barely graduated high school. I didn't go to college. I was out of my first band. So my hope was, it was literally hearing people in 12-step rooms going, I was a junkie shooting, junk in the park and whatever. And now I have my own art studio. I did the 12 steps. I was like, okay. And so this design for a living just kept yielding results. And it was actually, I had like in my early sobriety was like, well, I can't do music anymore. That's not a part of a sober life. Clearly, I had attached the drugs and using to it. But then when I would go see shows, I would feel like this pain, like, I'm supposed to be up there playing. Not that I want to get chicks through playing and sign autographs, that like my soul needs to play. And I got it's actually in the 11th step of the 12 steps that talks about meditation. And it says we develop this vital sixth sense. So I'm working with my brother, hating this job, can't figure out how to get out of it. I'm like, my only hope is meditation. And I started going in doing these Wayne Dyer meditations for manifestation and putting out to the universe what I wanted. And I said, I want to get back into music. I don't feel like I'm done. I'm like, meditating on it. Within 10 days of that meditation, Korn texted me out of nowhere saying, hey, you want to come play guitar with us? Because they wanted a sober guitar player. So it's something I share a lot. My brain was like, this will never happen. You can't do music sober. The universe was like, you're wrong. And yes, you can. And so I like to share this because I think humans have so many blind spots of where subconsciously they're saying, well, this can't happen because of this super logical, factual type reason. But it can out of nowhere, right? Out of nowhere, I got this gig to go play with Korn. And I got to do it totally sober. And so I did that for a few years, touring the world. And then when that gig was going away, was how I got into the rock to recovery part, which is was super. When I got the Korn gig, I was like, yes, thank you. Finally,
into Korn. Yeah.
My long, trials and tribulations. I've made the big time. I'm there, and it's all because of recovery and, spirituality and all these things. But now it's going away. And I'm still basically I don't have any trade other than playing guitar. So really I went back into prayer and meditation. It was basically like, okay, I don't think I'm here to suffer. And so if I'm supposed to be sober, otherwise I would be dead, and I'm called to be an artist, a musician, how do I help people and make a living? And that really, to me, is like the secret juice of the prayers I think we make with the universe. I think that we should teach it in schools. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's really like, who are you? What do you love? And how can you use it to help people? And for me, that's when the heavens opened up. I got this download. You're going to bring music into treatment centers. And I formed the organization on 12/12 of 12. So we've been doing this for 13 years.
I had a big breakup on that day. I ended it. Yeah. So funny how I was in Seattle and that's what you were doing. I called that when you were like sitting there watching bands or whatever, and you felt that pain. I call that the soul ache. And the soul ache is a catalyst to get you into your calling. Mm-hmm. And you thought it was to get back into music, which it was with Korn and everything, but it actually took you one step further into service.
Yeah.
And so before we get to Rock to Recovery, I wanted to ask you this. When you feel like you're expanding to that next octave of, consciousness or self-actualization or expansion, do you feel like you have to cross a threshold? And if so, do those core wounds of fear or whatever pop up? Or have you kind of gotten over those?
Gosh, I feel like all people, but I'll speak about myself, have certain areas where they can just kick ass. And then the core wounds show up in the other areas that you're obviously struggling in. So for me, more around romance, and we talked about abandonment and rejection and intimacy and all that. That's something I still work on. Mm-hmm. For me, to be a visionary and in a business or vocational sense to say I'm going to go get it, that's where I tend to be a little more fearless. You said if you have to walk across the threshold, there's a interesting moment when I was trying to get the Korn gig because they had some interest, but they weren't making a move. And they were going on tour after tour. I'm talking to Monkey and Korn going, dude, what's up? He's like, I want you in, but I don't know about the other guys. So I took the end of my money and flew out to a small market area and ran with them for a few shows trying to go, yo, I'm here. I'm ready to go. So one of the things I had to do was jam guitar with Monkey so he could, because he already said I was one of his favorite guitar players, but he needed to see me play. That somebody on the inside told me. So I got that handled. The other thing is I had to talk to Jonathan Davis, the singer, because for whatever reason, the message didn't get to him. So I had to go. Korn, by the way, their ethos is pretty intimidating. They're like, it's not hippie love fest over there, although there's a lot more so now, but throughout their history, they were known as like, fuck with Korn.
Yeah.
So I had to talk to Jonathan, told his assistant, I got to talk to Jonathan. And he went into the tour bus. And this is like the last day I'm going to be out there and my last chance to make a move. The assistant came out and goes, sorry, he's busy. And there's a reason I'm sharing this. And so I walk away kind of dejected, like, damn it. And then I remembered this quote I heard, which was your success will be determined by how many uncomfortable conversations you're willing to have. Literally, like you couldn't put it in a movie because it was too cheesy, but I lived it.
That is a powerful mantra.
It really is, especially I get chills right now because especially for somebody who's insecure and soft or can be codependent, like, oh, I don't want to bother you. I turned around and I went back to that guy and I go, no, man, I came out here to talk to Jonathan. I want to talk to Jonathan. He was like, okay. I mean, to go back in the tour bus and bother the lead singer again and go, that's unheard of, right? Usually they'd be like, no, dude told me, no, you're done. Bye. Yeah. And he went in, Jonathan came out and I was like, dude, I'm ready. I know. He's like, oh, I didn't even know. So you're asking me if I had to step over the threshold, it's like, well, what are these esoteric statements and moments? It's moments where we apply what we learn and step into a new timeline by our actions, right? Because we can read every self-help book and every lecture and hear it all, but we have to start changing our behaviors in life. And for me, that was a moment of many where you're stepping over the threshold.
Wow. That's huge. So what, how does Rock to Recovery unfold?
Yeah, there's
and tell us what it is.
Will do. Thanks for asking.
Yeah.
There's a phrase in one of the 12-step literatures that says we do this out of necessity rather than virtue. And that really stuck with me because so often people are like, oh my gosh, you do Rock to Recovery. You're such a great guy. You're such a great guy. It's like, well, just so you know, I did this out of desperation to pay some bills. And I think it's important, at least from my perspective, what I experienced wasn't that I said, okay, life sucks, let me become virtuous. I did say, how do I help people make a living? So the Korn gig's going away. I'm terrified. I'm going to be out of work. I'm mad at the universe. And I just had one choice in my eyes, was to get deeper into prayer and meditation and go, where the fuck do you want me? I don't know what to do. You know, if I'm not here to suffer and be a broke musician who's about to lose his apartment and his car and everything, what can I do? So how do I help people make a living? That was a mantra I was taught. So in the meditation, it came to me to bring music into treatment. I was in treatment centers with 22 guys. You're like, there's so much weird energy in there and clicks and you don't get along. That's your homie. That guy's weird. Screw him. And I would break out my guitar and just play a couple chords and literally feel in my body, especially in that dark and tough environment, how it would transform the room. So that was the download I got. Bring music into treatment. You're drawing pictures with crayons and that's therapeutic. How come there isn't music in treatment? And my need that I saw in the world was we're not using music enough to help people. So the way I did it, the concept of my program is to write songs with non-musicians, because that's how I did it in my band. My band were musicians, but it's just what I do. I come in with ideas and help bring it out, you know, these song ideas and cultivate them. So I pitched it for like 8 months, got a bunch of people who said it was a great idea, but wouldn't hire me. Finally got a chance. And what I do is I don't want to give away too much of my IP, my intellectual property.
Yeah.
But I connect to the people in a very emotionally profound way. And I show them that that's how music and songs starts. And I show them how from these soul discussions, that's how we create our best lyrics. And I instruct people how to play. And by the end of each session, everybody, regardless of experience, is singing and playing a song. And we record it at the end of the session. So, what would happen is, if you can imagine a treatment center where you meet with your therapist, you go in group and everybody talks and they're mad, they're depressed, and you're learning about drug addiction, all this thing. And, a lot of people are despondent or they're not engaged or whatever. But in my sessions, they come in like maybe nodding off on Seroquel or whatever. By the end, they think they're Eminem singing their like victorious mantra or rapping or whatever. And the therapists are like, what did you do to these people? And in one of the very early, because I can't say I came from a scientific clinical perspective from the onset, but now I have gained that. Well, what I witnessed in one of my early sessions was a junkie who came in who was like, F you got these instruments. Why? I'm going to die on the streets. How can this help me? And he was, he couldn't sleep. He couldn't eat. He was defecating himself and was pissed. And by the end of the session, he was like, dude, you're going to be here next week, right? Oh my God. And I was like, what drug does that? Please tell me. And so that's been my inspiration to go on down. So we have a team of about 20 people who do our methodology out in the world. We do 600 sessions a month. We work with hundreds of treatment programs. We are integrated as part of the curriculum, the weekly curriculum of mental health, addiction, eating disorders. We have a 9-year contract with the Department of Defense working with wounded warriors. They fly us around the country. So this little idea to use music to help people is actually given people careers. My main guy has, he's bought a house, and so it's been the biggest gift because I've been able to give musicians fulfilling work. First of all, if you're a musician, to do music and make money is very hard. But to do it, make money, and get fulfilled because you see people's lives change. So I get I'm in the most blessed spot. I feel like the luckiest guy in the world. And I'm not out there grinding on the road because let me tell you, as fun as it is to play to 80,000 people, it is tough to do year over year.
Yeah, my nephew's a touring musician right now, kind of starting out his career. I think after 1 or 2 tours, he's like, oh, wow, this is a lot harder than I thought.
Yep.
That is pretty freaking amazing. What a story arc. Was all the pain and suffering worth it to get where you are? And could you have ever imagined this kind of impact?
It's absolutely worth it. I believe that's why we're here. There's a saying in the rearview mirror, it will all make sense. I had a dream to be a music teacher when I was 18, but flunked out of college, like I told you. So scholastics are not my forte, but here I am getting to teach music, right? And even the job I hated with my brother, it's that was the job where I got to dry out my brain and learn about Google Drive and all. This is back in 2003, and I hated the job, but it gave me the skills for the next thing. So it's even the things we don't want in the rearview mirror, you find out that they were all absolutely vital. And I think once it's tougher for somebody new to this realm, if you're kind of in the beginning of your implosion or whatever it is, destruction. But when you get down the road a little bit, you realize, okay, so now for me, last year, I went through all every area of my life was just an existential crisis. And it's okay, there's an opportunity here. And you kind of learn that, and you learn to get out of self-pity and look for what, where am I supposed to go here? Because there's an opportunity to level up.
Yeah. One of my most hated jobs was writing case studies for Microsoft. And the client was absolutely miserable. Everybody on the team was miserable. But I got to work with this editor that really taught me really nuts and bolts of editing and stuff like that. So I'm forever grateful to her. I'm so glad I'm not at Microsoft anymore. So is there one in particular, or you can say as many as you want, but rewarding story for you within Rock for Recovery? A transformation?
Well, I kind of alluded to the story of Mr. Pink. That's what we call him, the guy who came in early. And just to be, not to correct you, but it's Rock to Recovery.
Rock to Recovery. I don't know what I said, but yeah, Rock to Recovery.
You said Rock for Recovery. It's all good.
Yeah.
So if people want to look us up, they know how to find us. So that was a big one. We had when we were working with wounded veterans, which, here I am going in kind of scared because I'm just a former druggy musician, and I crashed and burned, from that. How am I going to connect to a veteran who's seen their friends blown up and had to kill people and all? I didn't know. But what you learn is that when you're in that dark and hopeless place, it's very much the same. And so we were doing Rock to Recovery with some veterans, and a woman came in and she said she agreed to come to this one Air Force Wounded Warrior event, and after that she was going to kill herself. She was so certain it wasn't going to work. And she said, Rock to Recovery put a song back in my heart. And now she goes around, and that's part of her story that she shares at all these different places as an advocate. It's just wow, it's incredible.
Humbling.
Yeah, it's hard to believe, but where I very humbly will say, I know that our music program is not the be all end all of any recovery or transformational process. We also at the same time know that it's very often one moment that gives a breath to somebody who wasn't maybe going to take any more breaths, if you know what I mean, metaphorically.
Yeah.
And so we want to provide as many of those opportunities for those moments as we can, and we get to do that.
Wow. So you're kind of going in and dealing with people at the absolute bottom, that has to be very emotionally taxing sometimes. How do you kind of handle that, sort of guard your heart and keep it open at the same time?
It's tough. You have to do more spiritual work. I had a group once. It was actually at a treatment center that had been for years. We called it the Holy Grail. It was just the best women, the best experiences. But I had a real tough group there. He just had it in for Wes. No matter what I said, they would just turn it on me like a knife. And so I just got more into my spiritual processes of having to meditate really long before I'd go in there. And it would help me when I would have to just be cognitive of this has nothing to do with you, Wes, and be ready for the assault. If I expected them to be nice, I would be really hurt. But when I would go in there and go, they're going to say mean things because they're hurting. And I could actually smile sometimes when they come at me hard. I'd be like, come on. And it wasn't that I was being despondent or aloof. It's like I can just lighten up my whole, let it bounce off a little bit. Yeah. It's a challenging world. That's for sure.
So what's the guy who started Alcoholics Anonymous? Bill something?
Bill Wilson. Yep.
Bill Wilson. So I feel like I heard that he actually sort of got the whole download for the 12 steps on acid. Is that true or not?
No, not the way I understand it. He he was doing acid in the very early days when acid was thought to be potential medicinal for depression. Yeah. And Bill W. suffered with depression for his first couple of years of sobriety, which is often the case, right? You remove your medicine, which is the drinking. He actually, Bill, when he was drunk, prior to AA, there was the Oxford group and the Washingtonians, whatever. And there were early versions of AA. One was attached to a church. One was attached politically, and for obvious reasons, they imploded. So, but they had early versions of the steps, like a few steps, but not all 12. And so, as the story goes, Ebby came, an old friend of him who was a drinking buddy of Bill, came to visit him and was sober. And he's like, Ebby, you're sober? What? And did a little bit of the steps with Bill. But as the story I just heard, it was actually Carl Jung that had some knowledge of these miraculous spiritual transformations, because at the time they had written off certain classes of alcoholics as hopeless. Even the experts would say there's no hope for these people. You're going to drink and die, and that's just how it goes. But they saw that some people would have these spiritual transformations that would give them a miraculous, life-saving event. And so that's what they went after. And he was reading a book by William James called Variety of Spiritual Experiences. So they were trying to bottle, if you will, steps to get that spiritual experience. And that's what the 12 steps are.
So I guess my question leading into that, or leading to that, is what do you see a role of plant medicine in treatment for anything you're dealing with, alcoholism, sex addiction, whatever we're talking about in the AA world?
This is great. This is a super touchy subject. So I love to get to talk about this. Okay, so first of all, one of the precepts of Alcoholics Anonymous is the thing I talked about earlier, which is the allergy, which means even if a doctor says, oh, you got back pain from your surgery, take this Norco, it can set it off. I could be 20 years sober and doing all the sober things I'm supposed to do, but ingest that pain pill, that phenomenon of craving happens, and you're off to the races. And it's been true for so many people, and I've proven it to myself. Okay, so that concept's hard for people to grapple, but that's what we base an alcoholic of the AA type off of. So with that, we have to be careful, because even stuff like ibogaine and stuff like that, people can use it as like a cheat code to because think about it. If you're sober, even if you have a great life because of your sobriety, there's this party that wants to escape. And if you're like, oh, ibogaine, I hear this could help me with my trauma, or ayahuasca, people subconsciously, right, use it with bad intentions or subconscious motives. Having said that, So that's why in the room of 12 steps in AA, a lot of people will be like, no, fuck that. You can't do that. That's evil. Because they don't want to see somebody go try microdosing and next thing you know, they're drinking and they're dead, because that is a very true potential. Having said that, my belief is the entire world should do acid and mushrooms, because I think by and large, it helps you access stuff outside of your egoic indoctrinations, which we all have, and can only help the world. And I've always felt this way. So my message was, okay, to answer your question, do I see a role? Absolutely. Do I see benefit? Absolutely. Do I think that, especially, let's talk about organics, right? Ayahuasca, plant medicine, mushrooms. Absolutely. I think that the cure is more likely in something God created through a plant medicine that natives have been using through Mother Aya and ayahuasca. Yes, absolutely. I believe in that a hell of a lot more. Not that there hasn't been gains in lives saved and transformed, but then pharmaceuticals, where pharmaceuticals for mental health and psychotropic meds or psych meds, they don't really know what they're doing. Like there's SSRIs, they understand that, but a lot of times it's like, well, let's try this. Let's up your dose. Let's lower the dose. It's kind of, you know what I mean?
It's like Russian roulette, where they don't have a lot of, well, I guess they have some consequences, but we give all that power away to the white lab coat. And we're like, well, they must know what they're talking about, so I'm safe taking this pill.
Right. And that's what we've been indoctrinated with as modern society, that trust the doctors with the stuff that's made in the labs, and, native practices are silly and plant medicine is silly. And so I'm excited that paradigm can shift. And if we look at and again, a lot of people take psych meds and it helps them through a period, and thank God for their results. Having said that, if you look at what a lot of the psych meds, the bad side of them, where it turns you suicidal or whatever, it's like, it's really scary. But the other side I would say is that I think so often, and if we're talking plant medicine, it ties into my belief that oftentimes it's a spiritual solution, right? Maybe to get connected to God, we have to do deeper trauma work so we can have that connection. But psych meds inhibit the connection to spirit, right? Yeah. And so plant medicines, the concept, if you go deeper, is that those are helping you connect to spirit. So it's less ego, more spirit. So I'm for that.
I mean, the reason why I always start with 17, because that was kind of my inciting incident. I took, not really knowing what I was doing, took a heroic dose of mushrooms at a Grateful Dead concert, and was just like, now I can call it unity consciousness, but I was just like, oh my God, everything's connected. Like, it blew my mind. And I was like, whatever the fuck this is, I want to study it. I want to understand it. I want to express it, So I kind of heard the whisper of the calling. I think I already probably wanted to be a writer, but it really kind of became ingrained in that experience. And I've done ayahuasca twice. After the first time, I said I'd never do it again, but nobody likes a quitter. So I tried it again. I am curious about it in a more kind of in a different setting, but also it's like, that is not something, I don't know how people keep going back again and again. I think because they're chasing the dragon, but it's it's not something to trifle with. It is a powerful, powerful experience. So in this whole realm of medicine, in your experience, how does music act as medicine, not just for the audience, but for the creator?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what we talk about, to set up our sessions for people who are like, I don't play anything. How is this going to help me? What we start with, this concept of people I'm not musical. Okay. If you were 5 years old and I put on music right now, what would you do? Oh, I'd start dancing. Okay. Then you're musical because nobody taught you how to do that. So let's start with that. Secondly, let's talk about the magic of music. Can music change the way you feel? A happy song, a sad song, an intense song? Right. Of course it can. There's a magic there. And 99% of the people will say listening to music is actually magic in how it changes my vibration. So when we're in that state, we're engaging half of our mind, half of our brain, right? But when we play music, we're engaging our whole brain, and it's very unique in that way. So it's pulling you into the present moment. I think Science really doesn't understand much of the magic of it, but we know that it helps release endorphins, serotonin, and oxytocin, which is the love molecule. Oxytocin is released when you hug somebody for 20 seconds, when mothers breastfeed. It's one of those molecules that makes us feel a part of and connected. So it's actually stimulating your own internal pharmacy of feel-good chemicals. And that is much more profound and exponentially greater when you're playing music in a group setting than just listening to it.
Yeah, I also think. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Were you going to continue?
Well, I was just saying, if you look back at how it was started, like in churches, look at what we did, or in sing-alongs or whatever. It wasn't about how good or talented you are. One thing I always say is pop culture kind of stole music from the community, because now people are like, oh, if I can't sing like Beyonce, I can't sing. It's like, no, we do it as a community. It's not about being great. It's about the activity together.
And it's fun. I mean, I was just kind of thinking about, because I had a band way back in Seattle, and I was thinking about, because I write about it in the new book, but like when you're in that space of playing music or writing, or even when I go for hikes up here, it's like you go into that trance state, and then you become a clear channel for new information to come through. And that, I mean, that's when I assume like you're just, riffing on some chords, and all of a sudden, boom, that line drops in, and then you just, construct the whole song around that, that lyric. So what do you want people, what do you want people to understand about the link between addiction, creativity, and spirituality?
Addiction, creativity, and spirituality. Wow, that's great. Well, addiction is an issue with something that we haven't felt or we don't want to feel. We're having problems understanding our feelings. Creativity comes in many forms, but it's an expression of feelings that can lay dormant. Journaling is creativity. Painting, playing music, singing. It's a cathartic mechanism, and there's a reason humans have been drawn to it, because there's an emotional connection there. So if addiction is struggling with emotions, or the trapped emotions from childhood, which we all have, then creativity is one of the most God-given opportunities to express, get cathartic, and get out of one's self. And what was the last thing?
Spirituality.
Addiction, creativity, and spirituality. Oh, right. So spirituality, that's an interesting word, because what is spirituality? So spirituality is, to me, being in connection with the creator of the universe, God, love, whatever you want to call it. Like, we all have that thing where we feel like we are connected, whether you call it God, Jesus, Buddha, Allah, it doesn't matter. There's that thing, and it's in here. It's in the body, right? And so, like you're talking about, in creativity, we somehow get this brain, and I was talking to my friend about it recently. It almost sounds grandiose, but I don't think it is. It's that when we play, we're channeling, right?
Exactly.
We're allowing something to come through. Whether you're journaling or painting, we're allowing this channel of expression to come through. So we're letting this thing go, the brain, which is the opposite of spirituality. It's based on fear and worry and the ego, and where do I sit in the world? Am I good? Am I small? And whatever. And we're connecting to our body, to that tangent that we have to the universe. So where addiction is numb out, I don't want to feel, disconnect from myself, the world around me, and God, is ultimately what happens. Within creativity, it can take us home as a way to feel our own spirituality and connection to the universe.
Yeah. I mean, music, art, whatever, it's a practice, really, at the end of the day. And the practice is what quiets the thinking brain, and that puts us into trance. And then that is what connects us into that field. And I mean, that's part of why I became a writer. I'm sure why you became a musician, because you are in this stream of information, and it's just like, it's almost electric. And when it's coming through, I'm just listening to my higher self, and I'm like, I know not to judge it, because like, when you bring a human thought process, I was just having this conversation with somebody last night. when you bring a human thought process to when that information is coming in, it cuts it off immediately. So you just have to be completely immersed and entranced in the present moment.
Yeah.
So when you look back at the arc of your life from starting music and the, chaotic childhood, etc., through rock to recovery, what is the thread that's tying it all together?
Spirit. It's spirit, it's that's always the way home. That's always the way back on the path. That's been, even when I was in my dark meth addiction going around the world, I was still expressing from a point of spirit. And maybe it have been my shadow spirit, the dark spirit, the sad little kid that was never seen who wants to write the punk song and all that. But that's it. It's the way home. It's everything that's guided my life, and even in moments where I'm disconnected. Very simply.
Man, meth. I didn't know meth was part of the equation. That sounds probably like a tough one to get out of. A tough spiral.
Yeah. It's funny because meth is, for those that don't know, it's like cocaine exponentially. And while there's so many horrible associations with meth, and rightfully so, because people, get paranoid and they steal and you get really dark. I've played on every drug: acid, heroin, mushrooms, mescaline. For some reason, for me, it just got me deep into this like super deep part of my shadow, part of my soul. And it was actually the most expressive stuff. Not when I was out in the world, but when I was holding with a guitar in hand, it was pretty interesting. So I'm not a proponent of it, but I definitely used it, like you're talking about, to shut off the mind and try to find that trancy state.
Block the feelings too.
Yeah.
And yeah. So what would you say to someone who's currently in their darkest chapter?
Every great story starts from the darkest chapter. I mean, that's where it is. Find stories of inspiration out there. That's what helped me. When I would hear like, I was a prostitute in the park turning tricks, and I did this, and now look at my life. I think hearing stories of people who go from hopelessness to the life beyond their wildest dreams are the things that gave me hope that it could happen for me too. To believe in miracles, to believe that you're not here to suffer. And I just think it's so important to find, to get away from the people who are stuck in the darkness and go save yourself and get next to people who have been in hell like you and found their way out. I really think that's the key. And today, in this world with information and social media and all that, there's so much access to people out there, healers and people who will help you out, and communities of people who want to help people.
Yeah. I always like, if I'm coaching somebody on writing or something, it's also part of why this podcast is called The Inciting Incident. I'm always like, why are you starting the story? Why are you starting it there? What is the inciting incident? So the darkest chapter, if you're listening, this could be the inciting incident. It could be the rest of a beautiful story. Do you have a new company called BandJAM or something like that?
Yeah, thanks for asking about that. Well, one other thing I just want to say, which is crazy probably to hear if there was somebody hearing this in the deepest dark pits of hell, is that once we start getting into solution, the very stuff that we think is insurmountable or our cross to bear or whatever becomes the very light for which we help other people out. Like, so all the stuff I didn't like that hurt so bad, that sharing that story with others is how we light the way for them out. So suddenly it turns from a dark, horrible cross to bear to the brightest light to save others. And I think that's an incredible gift. Okay, BandJAM, thank you for asking. So rock recovery started out in addiction, and then a lot of mental health and eating disorders and behavioral disorders and all that. But what we're doing is working, and we want to get out to a broader market. Mental health is an epidemic in the world, and especially in this country these days. So many people are struggling. The wellness industry in terms of corporate wellness and stuff like that is projected to be a $6 billion market. It's not about the money, but the point is that society's waking up and corporations are waking up and integrating it. And they know that when we know now, data shows us that we spend $1 up front on keeping people healthy, it saves us $5 on the back end from trying to fix them after they're in a rehab and suicidal or a junkie or whatever. So BandJAM is a new company we formed to use as existing technology and do a double-sided marketplace like Uber, where we have the musicians on one side and the potential clients on the other. And we help connect people so we can do our group music sessions as a, healing and transformative force to elevate wellness is what we say, through playing music as a group. And that's what BandJAM is. So we can do more like corporate settings and upstream realms.
Yeah. Is the URL BandJAM?
BandJAM.co. Yes. And
Okay.
I think our website, we've been working on this a while, but we didn't want to come out until things are pretty. I think our website still might be hidden, but we're days away from it going live as we get all our musicians looking pretty on there.
So by the time this comes out, it will be live. So go check that out, folks.
BandJAM.co.
Yep. Are you still a daily meditator? And what are your daily practices?
I wake up and I pray and give thanks and pray for people and ask the universe to show me, where I can grow, who I can help every day. And then I get into meditation. As we talked about at the top, you and I met at a Joe Dispenza event, and I'm a huge Dispenza fan and have had DMT experiences doing that. But now I'm doing SRF, which is Self-Realization Fellowship, which is
Yogananda.
Paramahansa Yogananda, brought it out of the East, and it's what they call the scientific approach to self-realization. What is self-realization? Self-realization is actually going beyond the self and getting to the true self, which is in union with the divine creator. So that's what I've been doing, and I do it every day. Yeah, absolutely. I can't live without meditation. Matter of fact, I'll tell you why I'm laughing. Today I was meditating and I only had a chance to do a few minutes. I usually like to do 20 or 30, and forgive me those at home, but it was just the tip because I only got to do 3. I was I feel where I want to just drop into that place, but I had to go. And I know that's a little lewd, but that's what my brain thought of.
We're all adults here. One or two last questions. Do you think that part of who you became or came into the world as, and what you experienced as addiction, etc., was a part of generational trauma? What did this come out of, do you think, a lineage or ancestry or your parents, or was it more environmental based?
Oh, that's a great question. So check this out. Some of it was stuff I experienced in this lifetime. But around some of my abandonment issues, I started reading a lot of Paul Selig, and he's a channel, and he channels the guides. Mm-hmm. And when you go see him channel, which I didn't know, I thought he was going to lecture on his book, but when you go see him, he literally channels the guides. And so people will ask questions when he's in breaks between channeling. And I was like, hey, why I've done so much work about this abandonment. Why do I get this anxiety that comes up sometime? Anyhow, and the guides said, this has to do with the past life for you. And the word that we are getting is treason. Now, Paul Selig doesn't lecture. The guides don't lecture on past lives. That's not his lexicon. So it was very unusual for them to say that. Then I went with my therapist who has done a lot of somatic healing, the Barbara Brennan School, which is all about energy healing. And, it's very spiritually based. One time in a session, that came up when we were talking, and she said, well, why don't you go into that a little bit? And this was at a point when I was like, yeah, past lives, maybe. I don't know. I don't believe one way or another. And the short version of the story is I just started meditating, and I got taken through this whole, without her guiding me, I went through this whole past life experience of me being like a Spanish marauder and being killed by my best friend. And I'm on the ground crying. And she's talking to me as I'm this guy and I'm saying all the stuff, which I had 5 pages. I journaled after that. So it's one of two things. I'm either full on schizophrenic and was for 45 minutes, or I had a past life experience. So to answer your question, I think it's a combo of both. My way I would explain it to the cynics or somebody who doesn't believe is like, even if you take a hard drive and wipe it entirely, there's still remnants of those files there.
Yep.
And they say in quantum physics and whatever, energy never dies, it just changes form. So that's science. So, and it's no less crazy. This some scientists who I don't know if it's Sagan or somebody said something like, it's no more insane to think we come here once, which most people will say, yeah, I believe I'm a soul and I come here. And then when I die, well, it's so crazy to think we come here multiple times. If we come here once, why not multiple times? Most things in life are a cycle. So for me to think it's logical we come here multiple times and that sometimes some of those energies are not completely wiped clean and we carry them karmically through our different incarnations, coupled with what we experience here and the traumas. Yes, that's my answer.
Are you familiar with Edgar Cayce?
Only when people bring him up.
I should send you a video or two because I've been really into him lately. And he was called the sleeping, I'll just tell people he was called the sleeping prophet. And he's probably the most well-known medical medium of the 20th century. He would go into these trance states and he could diagnose anybody on the other side of the world, had all of these medical breakthroughs, etc. He had talked about reincarnation in a couple, and I'm saying this because I just wrote it into the final draft of the book, but around 538 BC at the Council of Constantinople, Christianity actually sort of started taking out reincarnation from the Bible because it would take away, their power and everything like that.
Yes.
I have sort of a whole theory in this new book. It's called the circlotron, but it's like how we keep coming back through this, basically a torus field to perfect our soul on our return back to God, to source, whatever you want to call it.
Which is what the yogis do.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of crazy to think we just have one shot to either go to heaven or spend eternity in hell.
Exactly.
So if you could leave people with one thing, perhaps the most profound or powerful learning out of the story arc of your life, what would that be?
Well, who decides it's profound is the person who hears it.
I'm asking you, so it's profound to you. Exactly. Whether people find it profound is up to them. Just like art, when you put it out into the world, it's not yours anymore.
It may seem esoteric, but, because of meditation, that's how I got the Korn gig. That's how I did Rock to Recovery. That's how I've, have my house in Joshua Tree. It's through getting out of the egoic mind and connecting. And so when you're talking about Edward Cayce and he's tuning into people around the world, what I've learned, what I believe is that, we know quantum physics tells us this whole realm is an illusion, the physical realm. Everything that appears as matter is actually frequency and vibration. So in meditation, I'm going out and tapping into where all the information of the entire universe and world and the spirits and the guides exists. And so that may sound crazy, but to me, that is my most profound, exciting opportunity that I experience and rely upon for everything in my life. This thing is full of why it can't happen, why it won't happen. It will never tell me that I'll go to Joe Dispenza and meet a guy named Tim Shields and then we'll become friends. It won't make up those things. But when I get in the spirit realm and stay there and play in there, then the impossible becomes possible. The finite becomes infinite. And I just hope everybody goes and plays in that realm. And the only thing you can do wrong in meditation is judge your meditation and say, I'm bad at it or I can't do it, because that is your ego making up stuff that isn't true.
100%. And what do you do? Like, silence or guided meditations, or what do you practice?
Yeah, the SRF stuff
Okay.
is some exercises to set you up, but I'm doing silent meditation. Yeah, and that's why I made the tip joke, because the more I do it in time, I drop in deeper and deeper, and I literally feel the euphoric love where it's just like, oh yeah, none of that does matter, and it's not a spiritual bypassing; it's getting into truth. I'll just give you this last little story. I was freaking out in the early days of my business, like, what if it fails and I lose everything yet again? And I was taken by spirit. It's like, okay, well, what would you do? Because my therapist used to do that. What would you do then? What would you do then? What would you do then? And it got me all down to, well, I could go sit on that beach with somebody I love and eat some delicious food. And my whole body went electric. And I was like, that's it. I will always be able to go on God's beautiful earth with somebody I love and eat a delicious meal. And beyond that, it's all a blessing.
It's all gravy. I love it,
Yeah.
man. Well, I am super impressed and that the impact you're making. And I will say thank you for your service on behalf of all the people, past and future, who you will help. So,
And you too.
Thank you. Where can what's that?
Thank you for doing this podcast. It's a lot of work booking guests and recording things and put them out. I know. So thank you very much.
Well, I mean, I get so inspired from these conversations, so it's kind of a little selfish, and I just get to share it. So that's awesome. Where can people find you?
I'm easy to find. What is it? 7 letters, WESGEER. I'm on Instagram, is usually the most active profile I have. And I'm on the interwebs and the websites and Rock2 Recovery and BandJAM.co, but I'm not hard to find if you really want to.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
And hopefully we'll run into each other in the physical world one of these days.
I hope I see you in the real physical world. We can have our atoms touch each other.
That would be fantastic. Thanks for listening, folks. If you like this, please share it, especially if somebody's in recovery or if they are in a dark place. Please sign up for my newsletter, therealtimshields.com. That's my handles on social. Just about to send the final draft into the editor on Friday. So about 8 or 9 months, this book that's taken me 4.5 years to write should be coming out. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be, it's a lot of information that I never could have come up with in my own human mind. It just came through. So,
amen.
Yeah. Until next time, folks, Wes Geer, Tim Shields here, The Inciting Incident.